covering the Utes better than anyone else. This is Ute Insider Steve Bartle of KSLSports.com on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Howdy, Steve. How are you?
Doing okay, Jake. How you doing, man?
Oh, I'm doing great, Steve. We're here at the road home, and this is always a highlight of every year, helping folks out, and particularly at this shelter. And I know you have a young family. They help a lot of young families. 200 kids used the shelter last night. So it's always great to see the generosity of our listeners, and hopefully we're making a little bit of a difference. So to specifically answer your question, I'm doing great. But happy holidays to you. How are you? Your family ready for the big event?
Yeah, man, it's always a good time, and I've worked the road home and that a couple times in my lifetime, and it's really cool to see the generosity of so many people. And I think being here in Utah, it's one of the unique characteristics of our state, and so it's always cool to see that come to light around this time. And so like with my family, we're doing good, man. Miles is now, he's almost 3 and starting to grasp like what is actually going on, and so we're excited. We're pretty excited for this Christmas for sure.
Oh yeah, when the 3-year-old, they get into the ripping into the presents phase, like really getting after it. That's good times. All right, Steve, I'm just curious for your read on, now we've heard from Coach Whitt. We've played some of the sound on the show. I'm curious for your read on the entire situation.
Yeah, obviously, there's still a lot that feels like it's not been answered yet. There's still questions that have not been answered. But, in talking with Coach Whittingham last night at his media availability, he emphasized the point that, now is the right time for a change to happen. And, I believe him. I believe he truly feels that. I believe that, he knows that this is, a really good situation for Morgan to come into and to help him, get off to a good start in his career. But just with the whole entire situation, it feels like there's a lot of uncertainties, a lot of things that, like I said, things haven't been answered. And, with Kyle Whittingham, we're talking about a living legend, right? Like, that's the thing we're talking about with him is we're one of the top 10 coaches in the country, when he's on duty. And, for it to be, a Friday evening news dump with, the news of him stepping down and all of that, it just feels like there's a lot not being done to really send off a living legend the right way. And so, I'm sure that we'll get more over the next couple of weeks. We know that we're going to have a January 6th press conference to introduce Morgan Scally, but I really hope that Utah takes the time to send Kyle Whittingham off the right way, and I'm sure that they will do that. I'm sure that they're putting together things, but certainly an interesting time. And it's interesting. I've had a lot of conversations with people that have, been on the beat and that, and the belief coming off of the Kansas game was that, this was retirement. This was it. Like, we were all convinced that he was set to retire. And then, as we got into the off season, obviously that all changed a week after or so the season ended. Everything started to shift towards, Kyle wants to run it back now. And so I'm of the thinking that Kyle, doesn't fully know exactly what he wants to do just yet. And I think for him to step down, and he mentioned this last night, to step down, to step away, and to take time to fully, come to terms with, whatever route he wants to go, I think is going to be the smart move for him. So that's going to be his plan over the next month, is taking time to just digest, his future and what it looks like. So we got some answers on some things, but still a lot to be answered with this whole situation.
That is true. And I said this earlier in the show. I thought Whitt put on a PR masterclass yesterday. I thought all his comments were super classy. I thought he told the story without, I'm sure he did not want to get into the details. I'm sure Utah didn't want him to get into the details either. And he was able to get the message out there and answer questions basically without lying, which I get frustrated with. Like, I get it. You can't tell us every little thing, but that doesn't mean you have to lie about it, right? And he was honest. But one question, and you're talking about questions that didn't get answered, I still am not convinced that if Coach Whitt alone were to make this decision, that this was the decision they would arrive at. Do you have any take on that? If it really was Whitt and Whitt's decision alone, whether or not this would be the outcome that we're at?
Yeah, I think, again, it gets back to doing, what Kyle Whittingham has said time and time again, is doing what's best for the university. And the only person that will, let's just say this, Kyle Whittingham is the most powerful person up there, at the University of Utah, right? With what he's done over the last 21 years, the economic benefit that he's provided the university because of the success of his football program, nobody in their right mind is going to tell Kyle Whittingham to leave. Right? I don't think anyways. That's my take on it. But I do think, there was probably some indications. There was probably talk about, hey, Morgan Scally, there's a real possibility that if we all run it back that, Morgan, in his career, he wants to take that next step. He wants to be a head coach. He's already he's a year older than Kyle Whittingham was when Kyle took over the Utah job from Urban. Morgan is 46. Kyle's 45 when he took over. So the clock is ticking for Morgan, and you don't blame Morgan for wanting to ascend to that job, to that role. And I think ultimately that this was the decision. Was Kyle, completely ready to let go? I don't know, but I think at the end of the day, I think Kyle doing what's best for the program and handing the reins over to Morgan Scally is ultimately what influenced his decision more than anything else. And whether he was forced into that, I don't know. I don't know, to be honest. But ultimately, I think that is at the core of what this whole decision and what this whole situation is about.
What do you think Morgan will do differently than Whitt?
It's for the bulk of how this program operates, for the majority of how things go and what they do, it's going to look the same. I wouldn't be surprised if there are tweaks with, the offense and sort of the mindset and what they look to accomplish on a week-in, week-out basis. From what I've gathered, I know that Morgan believes in, having I don't want to say a high-octane offense, but certainly an offense that is more willing to throw the ball around because it benefits, you on the recruiting trail. Players, regardless of whether you're offense or defense, they like to see an offense that can move the ball effectively. And so I think that is going to be an interesting stamp on the offense when he takes over. Is that what we actually see? I think I don't want to say maybe the biggest difference, but I do know that, he's a big focus of him is going to be beefing up the recruiting and making sure that they have a lot of people contributing to the recruiting efforts up there at the University of Utah. I think that's going to be a big priority for him. And so, for the most part, it's going to remain the same, the day in, day out operation. But I do think there are going to be things that we see, that we notice over the course of time, that will reflect on Scally and this being his program when it comes to recruiting, when it comes to the offense, when it comes to some of these other things. I do think we'll see little differences here and there as he begins to take over here.
Any idea who the next defensive coordinator is going to be?
Man, he's got 4 great options right now serving under him on that defensive side of the ball with Colton Swan, Sharif Shaw, Lewis Powell, Luther Ellis. You really can't go wrong with any one of those guys. If I had to pick, a favorite where I was leaning on who would be the guy to emerge from that 4, I'd probably lean Colton Swan. I think he's the guy that, he's done a fantastic job recruiting to that linebacker position. He has experience as a defensive coordinator, in his time up at Weber State under Jay Hill. And, I know that Colton Swan has gotten a lot of interest from programs outside of Utah as well. So I would look at Swan first, but, man, I would be – if Shaw is up for it, if he wants to take that role, I think Shaw would be tremendous, as a defensive coordinator. And Lewis Powell as well, with just what he does recruiting and all that he does there for Utah. Again, he's got 4 great options in the building already. And that's going to be a tough call, but I would lean towards Swan emerging as the guy to become defensive coordinator.
Granted, it would be speculation, Steve, but do you have any idea how much dough Utah spent on the football team this year, NIL and from the university?
What was it? About $18 million.
Okay.
Altogether, $18 million.
How much do they want that to go up? Or how much does that have the ability to go up, do you think, if the private equity thing works out?
Yeah, it's going to go up. It's going to go up pretty significantly. I would anticipate it getting up to 25, 26, 27 million, just kind of depending on, when this private equity deal is first completed. And, with that private equity deal, I think it's important for people to understand, that all of that money is not necessarily going to NIL, right? Like, that serves a much larger cause for the University of Utah than just, equipping your rosters with good players. That's going to be a big thing. But I do think what it does is, it's going to free up and create opportunities because you're partnering with Otro Capital, who is going to help you set up these corporate sponsorships, which potentially increases your NIL opportunities. And I think that's where kind of the real interesting part of that PE deal comes, is the partnership with Otro and what it means for that. So I think Utah's, what they'll be able to do, funding the roster, I think it's going to see a significant boost once they get that deal completed and move forward with everything in place.
So they're not quite to the 20 yet, and they'll get to the 20 with this deal now.
Yeah, so they had the full $20.5 million, but not all $20.5 million went to football. It's split up between, men's basketball and all the other sports. So I think when it comes to the rev share portion, they fulfilled that full $20.5, but only, I think it was like $14 million went to football, and then the rest was covered by NIL.
Okay. All right. Well, it's an interesting world where we find ourselves, Steve. Any other news we need to know getting ready for the Vegas Bowl?
Man, just, more to come, obviously. It'll be interesting to get down to Vegas to get a feel for where the team is at. The team players are going to go home for Christmas, and then they'll fly directly to Las Vegas and get ready for the bowl game down there. But outside of that, we've got Utah basketball tomorrow night. Alex Jensen and the Running Utes taking on Eastern Washington. Obviously, with the loss last week to Mississippi State, Utah looking to get back in the win column tomorrow night. But man, that's about it on the Utah front. Pretty quiet month of December so far.
Yeah, right. I mean, you've hardly worked at all. I'm jealous.
Barely.
He is Steve Bartle. He covers the Utes for KSLSports.com. He's been very busy, and you should follow all of his work to stay up to date on the latest with all the Bartle bombs that have been dropping. You got to be following Steve. Thank you, Steve. Appreciate all you do.
Appreciate you, Jake.
There you go. Steve Bartle covers the Utes for KSLSports.com, and he's kind enough to jump on with us on Fridays.